The silence wasn't merely the absence of sound, it was a tangible presence, a heavy blanket of winter that smothered the world in its icy embrace. Each snowflake, a delicate fractal of frozen water, fell with a hushed insistence, accumulating into drifts that transformed the familiar landscape into an alien, white wilderness. The wind, a restless spirit, howled through the skeletal branches of the ancient pines, its mournful cry echoing across the frozen expanse, a constant reminder of the raw, untamed power of the wild. For Elias Thorne, the silence was a language he understood intimately, a symphony of whispers and sighs that spoke of the delicate balance of life and death. He had walked this path for decades, his boots leaving imprints in the snow that mirrored the lines etched on his weathered face. He was a hunter, yes, but not in the brutal, grasping sense of the word. He was a steward of the wild, a guardian of its ancient rhythms, a man whose soul resonated with the primal heartbeat of the forest. He understood the unspoken covenant between predator and prey, the intricate dance of survival that sustained the ecosystem. He took only what he needed, a single deer to feed his family through the long winter, a bear's hide to ward off the biting cold. He offered a silent prayer with each kill, a gesture of respect for the life he had taken, a recognition of the sacrifice made. But even in this sacred space where the laws of nature reigned supreme, the shadow of human cruelty could cast its long, dark reach. He found her, not by chance, but by a sense of unease, a prickling awareness that something was amiss. The trap, a crude contraption of steel and malice, was a foreign object in this pristine wilderness, a symbol of the greed and ignorance that threatened to consume the land. It was a snare, not set by any local, not by any hunter who understood the delicate balance of the wild. It was the work of outsiders, men who saw the forest as a resource to be plundered, its creatures as commodities to be exploited. The wolf, a female with silver-gray fur that shimmered like moonlight, struggled against the trap's cruel embrace. Her eyes, usually bright and fierce, were now clouded with pain and fear, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Elias approached cautiously, his movements slow and deliberate, his voice a low murmur of reassurance. He knew the wolf's fear, the instinct to fight even when help was offered. But he also knew the pain of the trap, the slow, agonizing death that awaited her if he did not intervene. He worked with a practiced hand, his fingers nimble despite the biting cold, his movements guided by years of experience. He disarmed the trap, its jaws springing open with a metallic clang, freeing the wolf's mangled leg. He treated the wound with a salve he carried, a mixture of herbs and oils that had been passed down through generations. He applied it with a gentle touch, his eyes filled with compassion, his heart aching for the creature's suffering. The wolf, now free, looked at him with a lingering gaze, her eyes holding a depth that surprised him. It was as if she understood his intentions, recognized his kindness. Then with a silent nod, a gesture of gratitude, she turned and disappeared into the snowy depths of the forest, leaving Elias alone with his thoughts. He watched her go, a strange sense of peace settling over him, a feeling that he had done something right, something that transcended the simple act of freeing an animal. He had offered a moment of grace in a world that often seemed devoid of it. Days passed, the memory of the wolf fading into the background of his daily life, replaced by the rhythm of his routines, the constant struggle for survival. He was tracking a bear, a massive male whose thick fur promised warmth and sustenance, its meat a source of vital protein. The tracks, large and distinct, led him to a frozen lake, its surface deceptively smooth, its edges fringed with snow-covered reeds. He stepped onto the lake, testing the ice with his boot, his senses alert for any sign of weakness. But the ice, weakened by a hidden current, gave way beneath him, plunging him into the frigid depths. The shock of the icy water was like a physical blow, stealing his breath, numbing his limbs, sending a wave of panic through his body. He struggled, his hands clawing at the slick ice, his boots kicking against the unforgiving water. But there was no purchase, no escape. Despair began to creep in, a cold, insidious feeling that mirrored the icy water around him. He knew he didn't have much time. The cold would claim him soon, his body succumbing to the relentless chill, his life fading into the frozen depths. Then, through the haze of his fading vision, he saw her, the wolf, her eyes glowing with an intensity that pierced the gloom, her presence a beacon of hope in the icy darkness. And behind her a massive bear, the very creature he had been tracking, its form silhouetted against the white landscape. What happened next defied all logic, all understanding, all the laws of nature he had ever known. The wolf, her gaze unwavering, seemed to command the bear, her presence a silent directive. The bear, in turn, moved with a purpose, a strange sense of urgency, its massive form gliding across the ice with an unexpected grace. It approached the edge of the ice, its massive paws finding purchase on the solid ground. Its eyes fixed on Elias, its presence a promise of salvation. The bear extended a paw, its size dwarfing Elias's hand, its thick fur a lifeline in the icy abyss. He grabbed hold, his fingers clinging desperately to the coarse fur, his strength waning with each passing moment. The bear, with a strength that seemed impossible, pulled him from the icy depths, its movements swift and decisive, its power a force of nature. He lay there gasping for breath, his body trembling uncontrollably, his mind struggling to comprehend the impossible. The wolf and the bear watched him, their presence a silent testament to the extraordinary event, their eyes filled with a knowing light. Then, as if their task was complete, they turned and vanished into the forest, leaving Elias alone with his disbelief, his gratitude, and a profound sense of wonder. He returned to his cabin, his movements slow and deliberate, his body still shaking from the lingering cold. The warmth of the fire, a comforting glow in the dimly lit room, did little to thaw the chill that had settled in his bones. He sat by the fire, his mind reeling, his thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and awe. How could a wolf and a bear, natural enemies, work together to save him? It defied all logic, all reason, all the understanding of the wild he had accumulated over a lifetime. He thought of the wolf, her eyes the way she had looked at him, as if she understood his plight, recognized his kindness. He thought of the bear, its massive form, the unexpected gentleness in its touch, the strength that had pulled him from the icy depths. It was as if they had both recognized him, remembered the act of compassion he had shown the wolf, repaid the debt he had never expected. He had always believed in the balance of nature, the intricate web of life and death, the delicate dance of predator and prey. But what he had witnessed transcended that balance, shattered his preconceived notions, revealed a deeper truth about the interconnectedness of all living things. It was as if the wild itself had acknowledged his kindness, repaid an unspoken debt of compassion, a gesture that spoke of a bond beyond understanding. He felt a strange sense of connection to the wild, a feeling of belonging he had never known. He had always been a part of it, a hunter among the trees, a silent observer of its rhythms. But now he felt intertwined, bound by an invisible thread, connected to the creatures of the forest in a way that defied explanation. He got up and walked to a shelf where he kept a collection of animal skulls and bones, mementos of his hunts, reminders of the delicate balance he sought to uphold. He picked up a wolf skull, its smooth surface cold against his skin, its empty eye sockets staring into the depths of his soul. He held it in his hands, tracing the lines of its jaw, feeling the weight of its history. He wondered if the wolf he had freed was related to the skull, if their spirits were connected in some way. He looked out the window at the snow-covered forest, his gaze searching the darkness, his heart filled with a sense of wonder and awe. He felt a strange sense of peace, a feeling that he was no longer alone, that he was part of something larger than himself, something ancient and powerful. He sought out Silas, a man who lived on the fringes of society, a hermit who spoke the language of the wild. Silas was said to know the old ways, the ancient lore that had been forgotten by most, the secrets that had been passed down through generations of those who lived in harmony with the land. He lived in a small cabin deep in the forest, his presence as much a part of the landscape as the trees and the rocks. Elias approached cautiously, his movements respectful, his heart filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. He found Silas sitting by his fire, his eyes closed, his face etched with the wisdom of years. He waited patiently, his presence a silent request for attention. When Silas opened his eyes, they were as deep and ancient as the forest itself, filled with a knowing light that seemed to see into the depths of Elias's soul. He listened to Elias's tale, his expression grave, his silence a testament to the weight of the words. He nodded slowly, his face etched with the stories of generations past, his eyes reflecting the flickering flames of the fire. He spoke of a time when humans and animals lived in harmony, when they spoke the same language, shared the same spirit, understood the interconnectedness of all living things. He spoke of the guardians of the forest, the ancient ones who watched over the land, who remembered the old ways, who protected the delicate balance. He spoke of the spirits of the animals, their wisdom and their power, their ability to communicate with those who listened, those who respected their place in the world. He warned Elias that the balance was shifting, that the old ways were fading, that the spirits of the forest were restless, their harmony disrupted by the intrusion of those who sought to exploit the land for their own gain. He told him that he had been given a gift, a second chance, a chance to make amends, to restore the balance, to protect the wild from those who would destroy it. He spoke of the ancient covenant, the pact between humans and animals, a promise to live in harmony, to respect the land, to protect its creatures. He told Elias that he had been chosen, not by chance but by destiny, to uphold that covenant, to defend the wild from those who would break it. He spoke of the challenges ahead, the sacrifices that would be required, the battles that would be fought, but he also spoke of the rewards, the sense of purpose, the connection to something greater than himself, the knowledge that he was playing a vital role in the preservation of the wild. Elias listened, his heart filled with a mixture of awe and trepidation. He had always been a man of action, not of mysticism, but Silas's words resonated with him, awakened a sense of understanding that had been dormant within him. He felt a growing sense of responsibility, a burden that he was both honored and terrified to bear. He knew that his life would never be the same, that he had been given a purpose, a destiny, a path that would lead him deeper into the heart of the wild. The gift Silas spoke of felt more like a burden, a weight that settled upon his shoulders, a responsibility that he wasn't sure he was ready for. Elias, a man of action, not mysticism, struggled to comprehend the ancient lore, the whispers of the spirits, the language of the wild. He had always been a practical man, a hunter who relied on his senses, his skills, his knowledge of the land. But now he was being asked to see the world differently, to understand it not just through his physical senses, but through his intuition, his connection to the unseen forces that shape the forest. He found himself drawn to the forest, not just as a hunter, but as a seeker, his senses heightened, his mind filled with questions. He saw the world with new eyes, noticing details he had never seen before, hearing sounds that had always been there, but had gone unheard. The animals, once simply prey or predator, now seemed to hold a deeper meaning, their eyes reflecting an intelligence he had never noticed before, their movements carrying a grace that spoke of a wisdom beyond his understanding. He felt a growing sense of responsibility, a need to protect the balance that was being threatened, to defend the wild from those who would destroy it. He began to see the signs of imbalance, the thinning herds, the disappearing birds, the restless spirits of the forest, their harmony disrupted by the intrusion of those who sought to exploit the land for their own gain. He knew he had to act, but he didn't know how. The ancient ways were lost to him, the language of the wild a forgotten tongue, the whispers of the spirits faint and elusive. He felt isolated, trapped between two worlds, the world he knew and the world he was beginning to understand. He sought out Silas again, his heart filled with questions, his mind seeking guidance. He found the old man sitting by his fire, his eyes closed, his presence a beacon of calm in the midst of the storm. Silas listened patiently, his silence a testament to his understanding, his eyes reflecting the flickering flames of the fire. He spoke of the ancient ways, the forgotten language, the whispers of the spirits. He told Elias that the knowledge was within him, that he just needed to learn how to listen, how to see, how to feel. He spoke of the importance of patience, of observation, of respect. He told Elias to spend time in the forest, to open his heart to the wild, to let the spirits guide him. He told him to trust his instincts, to follow his intuition, to let go of his fear and embrace the unknown. Elias left Silas's cabin with a renewed sense of purpose, a determination to learn the old ways, to understand the language of the wild, to protect the forest from those who would destroy it. He returned to the forest, not as a hunter, but as a student, his senses open, his mind receptive, his heart filled with hope. The forest, once a place of solace and familiarity, now felt charged with an unseen energy, a palpable tension that prickled his skin and sent shivers down his spine. The whispers of the wind, once a comforting lullaby, now seemed to carry warnings, their voices filled with urgency and foreboding. The rustling leaves, once a symphony of nature's music, now spoke of hidden dangers, their movements furtive and unsettling. He noticed strange occurrences, the sudden disappearance of animal tracks, the eerie silence that would descend without warning, the feeling of being watched not by the eyes of the animals, but by something else, something unseen, something ancient and powerful. He began to doubt his own sanity, wondering if the cold had affected his mind, if the whispers of the spirits were just figments of his imagination. He questioned Silas's words, dismissing them as the ramblings of an old man, the remnants of a bygone era. But the feeling persisted, the sense of unease growing stronger with each passing day, the shadows deepening, the whispers intensifying. He knew that something was coming, something that would test his understanding of the wild, something that would force him to confront the darkness that was creeping into the forest, threatening to consume the delicate balance he had sworn to protect. He tried to ignore the feeling, to focus on his daily routines, to find solace in the familiar rhythms of his life. But the shadows followed him, their presence a constant reminder of the impending danger. He felt a growing sense of isolation, a feeling that he was alone in this battle, that no one understood the threat that loomed over the forest. He sought out Silas again, his heart heavy with apprehension, his mind filled with questions. He found the old man sitting by his fire, his eyes closed, his presence a beacon of calm in the midst of the storm. Silas listened patiently, his silence a testament to his understanding, his eyes reflecting the flickering flames of the fire. He spoke of the ancient spirits, the guardians of the forest, their power and their wisdom. He told Elias that the shadows were a warning, a sign that the balance was being threatened, that the covenant was being broken. He spoke of the outsiders, those who had no respect for the wild, who sought to exploit the land for their own gain, who had forgotten the old ways. He told Elias that he had to be strong, that he had to trust his instincts, that he had to be prepared to fight for the forest, to defend the balance, to protect the ancient covenant. Elias left Silas's cabin with a renewed sense of purpose, a determination to face the darkness, to confront the outsiders, to protect the forest from those who would destroy it. He returned to the forest, his senses heightened, his mind alert, his heart filled with a mixture of fear and resolve. He knew that the battle was coming, that the fate of the forest hung in the balance, that he was the only one who could stand against the encroaching darkness. He discovered the source of the unease, the reason for the shifting shadows, the cause of the spirit's unrest. The outsiders had returned, their presence a blight on the pristine landscape, their actions a desecration of the wild. They were not just hunting for food or fur, not just taking what they needed to survive. They were taking something else, something that Elias couldn't quite understand, something that violated the ancient covenant, disrupted the delicate balance, angered the spirits of the forest. He found the carcasses of animals, not just wolves and bears, but deer and elk, their bodies mutilated, their spirits violated, their remains a testament to the outsider's greed and ignorance. He felt a rage he had never known, a burning anger that consumed him from within, a primal fury that threatened to overwhelm him. He knew he had to stop them, to protect the forest from their destruction, to defend the ancient covenant, to restore the balance. But he was just one man, armed with a rifle and a fading understanding of the old ways. He felt helpless, overwhelmed by the task before him, the enormity of the threat. He sought out Silas again, his heart heavy with despair, his mind filled with doubt. He found the old man sitting by his fire, his eyes closed, his presence a beacon of calm in the midst of the storm. Silas listened patiently, his silence a testament to his understanding, his eyes reflecting the flickering flames of the fire. He spoke of the ancient spirits, the guardians of the forest, their power and their wrath. He told Elias that he wasn't alone, that the spirits were with him, that they would guide him, that they would give him strength. He spoke of the importance of courage, of resilience, of faith. He told Elias to trust in the old ways, to listen to the whispers of the wind, to let the spirits guide his actions. He told him that he was not just fighting for the forest, but for the future, for the generations to come, for the preservation of the wild. Elias left Silas's cabin with a renewed sense of purpose, a determination to face the darkness, to confront the outsiders, to protect the forest from those who would destroy it. He returned to the forest, his senses heightened, his mind alert, his heart filled with a mixture of fear and resolve. He knew that the battle was coming, that the fate of the forest hung in the balance, that he was the only one who could stand against the encroaching darkness. He tried to rally the villagers, to warn them of the danger, to enlist their help in protecting the forest, but they dismissed him as a madman, a relic of a bygone era, a man who had lost touch with reality. They had forgotten the old ways, the respect for the wild, the fear of the ancient spirits. They saw the forest as a resource, something to be exploited, not protected, a source of wealth and comfort, not a sacred space. He felt abandoned, betrayed by his own people, left to face the darkness alone. He retreated to his cabin, his heart heavy with despair, his mind filled with doubt. He questioned his own beliefs, wondering if he had been wrong all along. Maybe the old ways were just stories, myths created to explain the unknown, remnants of a superstitious past. Maybe the balance of the forest was just a concept, a romantic notion that had no place in the modern world, a world driven by greed and progress. He felt lost, adrift in a sea of doubt, his hope dwindling with each passing hour. The silence of the cabin, once a comforting refuge, now felt oppressive, a suffocating weight that mirrored the despair in his heart. He looked out the window at the snow-covered forest, its beauty now tainted by the knowledge of the outsider's presence, their destructive actions a violation of its sanctity. He felt a profound sense of loss, a grief that went beyond the physical destruction of the land. It was a loss of innocence, a loss of faith, a loss of the connection he had felt to the wild. He wondered if he could ever regain that connection, if he could ever restore the balance, if he could ever forgive his people for their ignorance and their greed. He felt a deep sense of isolation, a feeling that he was alone in this battle, that no one understood the threat that loomed over the forest, the darkness that threatened to consume them all. He spent his days wandering the forest, his movements aimless, his heart heavy, his mind filled with dark thoughts. He avoided the villagers, their indifference a constant reminder of his isolation. He sought solace in the company of the animals, their presence a comfort in his despair. He watched them, their movements graceful and purposeful, their eyes filled with a wisdom he could not comprehend. He envied their simplicity, their connection to the land, their lack of doubt. He wished he could be like them, free from the burden of understanding, free from the weight of responsibility. But he knew that he couldn't. He was human, and with that humanity came the burden of choice, the responsibility to act, the duty to protect. He knew that he had to find a way to overcome his despair, to find the strength to fight, to restore the balance, to protect the forest from those who would destroy it. Then in the depths of his despair, when all hope seemed lost, when the darkness threatened to consume him, he remembered the wolf, her eyes filled with a quiet intelligence, her presence a beacon of hope in the icy wilderness. He remembered the bear, its powerful paw extending towards him, the unexpected gentleness in its touch, the strength that had pulled him from the icy depths. He realized that he wasn't alone. The animals were still with him, their spirits guiding him, their presence a silent reminder of the bond they shared, the debt that had been repaid, the connection that transcended the physical world. He went to the cave where he had buried the alpha wolf, his hands trembling as he knelt before the simple stone, his heart filled with a mixture of grief and gratitude. He closed his eyes, his mind reaching out to the spirits of the forest, seeking guidance, seeking strength, seeking a way out of the darkness. He felt a surge of energy, a connection to something ancient and powerful, a force that flowed through him, filling him with a renewed sense of purpose. He heard the whispers of the wind, not as warnings, but as instructions, guiding him towards a new understanding, a new path, a new way of seeing the world. He saw the forest not just as a collection of trees and animals, but as a living, breathing entity, a complex web of interconnectedness, a sacred space that deserved his protection. He saw the animals not just as prey or predator, but as allies, as teachers, as guides. He saw himself not just as a hunter, but as a guardian, a protector, a steward of the wild. He knew what he had to do. He had to confront the outsiders, not with violence, but with the power of the forest, the wisdom of the ancient spirits, the strength of his connection to the wild. He had to awaken the conscience of his people, to remind them of the old ways, to restore their respect for the land, to rekindle their connection to the spirits. He had to fight for the future, for the generations to come, for the preservation of the wild, for the balance that had been disrupted, for the covenant that had been broken. He rose from his knees, his heart filled with a newfound determination, his eyes shining with a spark of hope. He knew that the battle would be difficult, that the odds were stacked against him, but he also knew that he wasn't alone. The spirits were with him, the animals were with him, the forest was with him, and with their help, he would prevail. He followed the whispers, his senses heightened, his movements guided by an unseen force, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. He found the outsiders' camp, their fires casting an eerie glow in the darkness, their presence a violation of the forest's sanctity. He saw their traps, their weapons, their faces filled with greed and malice, their eyes devoid of any respect for the wild. He felt no fear, only a cold determination, a burning desire to protect the forest from their destruction, to defend the ancient covenant, to restore the balance. He moved like a shadow, his rifle silent, his hands guided by a force beyond his own, his every step a testament to his connection to the wild. He disabled their traps, one by one, his movements precise and swift, his knowledge of the forest guiding his actions. He released the animals they had captured, their eyes filled with gratitude and fear, their spirits yearning for freedom. He confronted the outsiders, not with violence, but with a quiet intensity that unnerved them, a presence that spoke of a power they could not comprehend. He spoke to them in their own language, his voice echoing with the power of the forest, the ancient spirits that watched over the land, the wisdom of the wild. He told them of the consequences of their actions, the disruption of the balance, the anger of the spirits, the desecration of the sacred sites. He showed them the mutilated carcasses, the broken covenant, the evidence of their greed and ignorance. He appealed to their humanity, their sense of right and wrong, their understanding of the natural order. Some scoffed, their hearts hardened by greed, their minds blinded by ignorance. Some trembled, their fear outweighing their arrogance, their conscience awakened by the power of his words. Some looked away in shame, their guilt a heavy burden, their remorse a flicker of hope in the darkness. But one, a young man with eyes that held a flicker of doubt, listened. He saw the truth in Elias's words, the pain in his eyes, the power of the forest that resonated in his voice. He stepped forward, his hand outstretched, his voice trembling as he spoke of his own doubts, his own unease with their actions, his own yearning for a different way. He pleaded with his companions to stop, to leave the forest in peace, to respect the ancient ways, to honor the covenant. A conflict erupted, a clash between greed and conscience, between ignorance and understanding, between darkness and light. Elias watched, his heart heavy with the weight of their choices, the fate of the forest hanging in the balance. The young man's plea resonated, a seed of doubt planted in the hearts of his companions, a spark of hope ignited in the darkness. They argued, their voices filled with fear and confusion, their greed warring with their conscience, their loyalty to each other tested by the weight of their actions. Some remained defiant, their eyes hardened with malice, their hands clutching their weapons, their hearts closed to the whispers of the wild. But others, their faces etched with uncertainty, began to waver, their resolve crumbling under the weight of their guilt, their consciences stirred by the young man's impassioned words. The young man, his voice growing stronger, his conviction unwavering, spoke of the beauty of the forest, the power of the wild, the importance of balance, the ancient covenant that had been broken. He spoke of the spirits, the guardians of the land, the consequences of their wrath, the price of their greed. He spoke of Elias, a man who had shown them compassion, a man who had spoken the truth, a man who had offered them a chance to redeem themselves. The defiant ones, outnumbered and outmatched, their arrogance replaced by fear, their greed overshadowed by doubt, retreated, their eyes filled with hatred and fear, their departure a testament to their defeat. They left the forest, their presence a stain on the pristine snow, their actions a testament to their ignorance, their departure a victory for the wild. The others, their faces filled with remorse and relief, their hearts softened by the young man's courage, turned to Elias, their eyes filled with gratitude and respect, their voices trembling with contrition. They apologized for their actions, their ignorance, their disrespect for the wild, their violation of the ancient covenant. They vowed to leave the forest in peace, to never return, to spread the word of the ancient ways, the importance of balance, the sanctity of the land. Elias, his heart filled with a quiet satisfaction, his spirit lifted by their repentance, nodded, his eyes filled with forgiveness and hope, his voice a gentle reassurance. He knew that the forest was safe, not just for now, but for the future, a future where humans and animals could coexist in harmony, where the ancient ways would be remembered, where the balance would be restored, where the covenant would be honored. He returned to his cabin, his heart lighter than it had been in years, his spirit soaring with a newfound sense of peace. He looked out at the snow-covered forest, not with fear, but with a sense of belonging, a feeling of connection to the land, a recognition of the interconnectedness of all living things. He knew that the wolf and the bear, the guardians of the forest, the silent witnesses to his journey, were watching over him, their presence a silent testament to the bond they shared, the debt that had been repaid, the seed of renewal that had been planted. He closed his eyes, his mind filled with gratitude, his heart filled with hope, his soul at peace with the knowledge that he had played his part in the preservation of the wild. The whispers of the wind, once warnings, now sounded like a lullaby, a gentle reminder of the ancient ways, the enduring power of compassion, the unbreakable bond between humans and the wild, the promise of a future where harmony reigns supreme. He knew that the story wouldn't end here, that the battle for the forest would continue, that the forces of greed and ignorance would always threaten the balance. But he also knew that he had planted a seed of hope, a seed of understanding, a seed of change. And that seed, nurtured by the spirits of the forest, watered by the tears of repentance, would grow into a mighty tree, its roots reaching deep into the earth, its branches reaching high into the sky, its leaves whispering the ancient wisdom for generations to come.